Hi everybody. I have actually recorded a video on the topic of how to accept symptoms. So I'm going to play it now, and I am going to be here to respond to comments. At the end of that short video, I'll do a short guided relaxation and share my top tip for helping you move from resistance to acceptance. So if you are watching live, do say hi. If you're watching replay, put hashtag replay. So let's play the video, and as I say, I'll come back. In this video, I want to talk about how to accept symptoms to support your body's healing. If you're struggling to accept symptoms that you're experiencing as a result of having ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID, you are not alone. However, consider that it is possible to move from resistance to acceptance. And when we do this, it can have a profound effect on your body's capacity for healing. If you don't know me, my name's Simon Pimenta. I had ME, CFS and fibromyalgia for 8-9 years. I went from not being able to walk for 1 minute at times to working again, living my life. I did get an injury a while back, which has slowed me down a bit, but life is still great. And I create a lot of content to help people move towards their health goals. So do subscribe if you like this video. So in this video, I am going to share 8 strategies to help you accept symptoms. So the first thing to consider is that acceptance is reducing resistance. It's not giving up. It's about meeting yourself where you are and reducing the internal struggle around your symptoms. Second step is to acknowledge your emotions. Okay? When we resist our emotions, that means we can ignore signals that our body is communicating to us. It's okay to feel frustrated, sad, and scared. And paying attention to those emotions, letting them move through you, can help release those emotions. Grieving your health is part of the healing process. It's also important to recognize that part of you feels that way. And there's another part of you that has the capacity for patience, acceptance, compassion, and trust. Third strategy is to identify and acknowledge your interpretation of symptoms. What meaning are you giving to symptoms? So, for example, often when I speak to clients, they're saying things like, I'm never going to get well when they experience symptoms. They're saying to themselves, because I've got symptoms, that's a sign that I failed. I didn't manage myself. Okay, those kind of interpretations are going to result in stress and upset. And of course, that stress just puts the body back into the sympathetic fight-flight state, which stops your body from healing. So the fourth step or strategy is to reframe your symptoms. So what would it be like if you viewed your symptoms as messages? So instead of fighting your symptoms, you got curious, exploring what they might mean, what they're trying to communicate, and listening to them. So it's useful to consider, what is draining me? Is it events? Is it other people? Is it myself? So for example, when I had ME/CFS, sometimes other people were a source of stress. And part of the reason that was stressful was the way I was responding to their behavior. I also got in my own way. Whenever I had energy, I had a tendency to overdo it, for example. Sometimes I was a bit strict on myself and was a bit rigid in my approach, which meant another part of me would rebel and say, screw all this kind of structure, and would stay up late, eat all the wrong things. And I would pay for it by feeling more tired. But sometimes I felt like it helped release that kind of tight control that I was having on things. Also consider what does recharge you. One of the things I've talked about before is that one of the things that gave me pleasure was playing the guitar. My tendency was to do it for too long. I realized that I needed to do it more often so that I didn't want to keep playing. And when I picked it up every day, then it was easier for me to pick it up, put it down. So fifth strategy is building on that. What action do you need to take? For example, if you have an understanding of what's generated symptoms, whether it's other people, whether it's something you've done, for example, as I say, for me it was overdoing it, then what strategies do I need to put in place? If someone's been behaving badly, maybe I need to communicate with them. And that was difficult for me at one point because I worried too much about what people think. And so I had to shift that mindset pattern. So it's really important to identify what action we can take. And we can start by taking really small steps. So, sixth strategy is to speak to yourself with compassion. Replace harsh self-talk with kindness. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to others. Say to yourself, you're doing your best. This isn't easy dealing with this challenge. It's okay to be easy on yourself. So, seventh strategy is to just practice any strategy that's going to help you feel more grounded, more mindful. You know, when symptoms are feeling overwhelming, grounding yourself can bring you back into the present. Practicing mindfulness can help calm your mind and body. I talk about a simple way of practicing mindfulness in another video, which I will link below this video. So the eighth strategy is to consider that healing is a journey. It's not a straight path. There are ups and downs. It's not linear. If you experience symptoms, that doesn't mean you've failed. It's just feedback. So every moment where you cultivate self-compassion, every moment where you pause, tune in, and discern what you need is a step forward. So, how did I make that quick change of clothing? That is for you to guess. So, what of those points that I mentioned resonated? I'm curious. Do you find that you tend to be in resistance rather than acceptance of symptoms? Do you acknowledge your emotions? What is your interpretation of symptoms? Let me know in the chat. I'm really interested. If you experience a symptom, what are you saying to yourself? Do you reframe your symptoms? Do you consider there's another way of thinking about symptoms that I've talked about? Do you explore what action you could take to help put yourself in a calmer state, in a more regulated state? Do you speak to yourself with compassion? Do you practice grounding yourself and mindful practice? Do check out the video I mentioned where I share kind of 3 ways that we respond to our thinking. And when we understand those three ways, we can recognize those 2 ways that are maybe not so helpful, and we can start cultivating that third approach. So do check out that video. It's a short video. Do you remind yourself that healing is a process? It's not a straight line as much as we'd like it to be. So just let me know in the chat. I'm really curious. Currently, how do you respond to symptoms? Or up until now, how do you respond to symptoms? So I invite you for the moment, though, whilst you're here, is to just close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And we'll just do a very short guided relaxation around shifting from resistance to acceptance. How we can make that shift. So Derin says, I struggle with being kind to myself. I'd never talk to anyone the way I talk to myself. Okay, so it's good that you've recognized it. That's the first step, Derin. Second step is to recognize that if you have a belief or a value that you should treat people with kindness, then it's important to recognize you are a person and therefore you deserve that. All right. So let's say if your kindness compassion score out of 10, well, you can let me know if you like in the chat. What score would you give for self-compassion out of 10, with 10 being Dalai Lama levels of self-compassion? Whatever that score is it possible to just increase it by half a point? It is. In order to do that, we need to catch ourselves when we're being hard on ourselves. Take a pause, take a breath, and just recognize we've got a choice. We can carry on doing that behavior and reinforce that unhelpful way of responding to ourselves, or we can just take a breath, recognize we've got a choice, and we can take a different response. Okay, you can practice treating yourself the way you treat other people. So let's have a look at the other comments. Priya says hi. Hi, Priya. Vivian says, I don't know why I always push myself so much, which brings on symptoms. Maybe not being kind to yourself. Yeah, it could be that. It's something that's really worth kind of sitting with. What is driving that push pattern? Do check out my video, Beating Boom and Bust, where I talk about some of the drivers. Okay, it's on my YouTube channel, so do check that out. So Dip says, mostly I respond with fear, but then at some point your teachings and knowledge and others comes through and I can stop myself, whereas before I wasn't aware. That's fantastic to hear. And that's the thing. Once we're aware that there is another option, okay, then it becomes a choice. Now, it's easy to do that old pattern because the wiring is established. It's, you know, it's a default pattern. So it does take consciousness. It does take the ability to say, I recognize this pattern. But there is a part of you that I call the wise self or the authentic self that has the capacity to spot patterns. Oh, when I've got symptoms, I tend to give myself a hard time, be unkind to myself. That is a pattern. I could recognize that I've got a choice, that I could do something that's more useful. It's also important to recognize that might have been a learned behavior. So you might ask yourself, well, where did I learn that behavior? Did it just come from me, or did I learn it from those people around me? If we recognize that we did learn it from others, then we've got to make a decision. Do we want to carry on running that program, that response, or do we want to recognize we have choices and we can choose to treat ourselves differently? So Darren, yes, need better, quicker awareness. That comes with practice. Just the key here is to practice. I'm being unkind to myself. Pause, take a breath. We want to create a space between the stimulus and response. The more that we can create a gap, we've got more choice about how we respond. So Diane says, I've always been hard on myself. Okay, what I would say, Diane, is, and you say with ME, I may be worse. You've always been hard on yourself up until now. Okay, what happens when you say that? Or in the past, I was hard on myself. How does that change things when you say it in that way? Okay, let me know. I'd be interested. So, all right, thanks for your comments. Let's pause for a moment. I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes for a moment, and we'll do a very short, relaxed, guided relaxation. All right. So obviously only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. So I invite you just to make yourself comfortable. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze. I invite you to take a breath. Breathe in through your nose into your belly and breathe out of your nose. As you breathe in and out, you can allow your out-breath to be a little longer than your in-breath. When you do that, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest healing state. And in this state, your body can do important repair work. I invite you to consider that if we change the way we look at things, this can influence our physiology, our thinking, and the body's capacity to heal. So I invite you just to have awareness of how you are responding to symptoms with compassion. It's really important we bring compassion to the picture. So if I recognize, I'm being hard on myself, and there were many times, particularly when I had ME/CFS, that I was being hard on myself because I sometimes felt that the symptoms I was experiencing was a result of my actions and behavior. So cultivating self-compassion is like putting a really useful tool in your toolbox that's going to help you navigate the challenges and support healing. I invite you to consider, as you acknowledge your interpretation, that you have other choices. Okay? So if we tell ourselves that symptoms mean that we're not going to heal, that symptoms are permanent, then that's going to have an effect on how we feel. It's going to affect our thinking. It's also going to affect our physiology in this moment. The problem with telling ourselves those things is that they are an opinion, not a fact. It is made up. It may be based on previous experience, but remember, previous performance is no indication of current or future performance. And the fact is, we do not have a crystal ball, so we can't predict the future. And as I say, that way of thinking adds stress to our physiology, and that hinders the body's healing. Conversely, if we tell ourselves that the symptoms we're experiencing are feedback, they're a signpost as to what can help us heal. They're useful information. We could tell ourselves that they are temporary. When we do that, that can actually help us regulate our nervous system. Now you might say, well, hang on, that's an opinion, not a fact. It's made up. We don't have a crystal ball. Well, whilst that's reasonable in the response, there is science that tells us when we activate the parasympathetic healing state, this supports the body's healing. And we can activate both the sympathetic fight-flight response, the parasympathetic healing response, via our mind. I invite you to consider that there's a part of you that is having those anxious thinking. And you can take care of that part, because there is another part of you that is wise, that has responded to challenging situations many times in your life. That part of you is like the blue sky, it's always there. Perhaps you're not always connected to it. I invite you to consider that you can cultivate that connection. You can remind yourself each day of times where you just responded in a resourceful way. You can remind yourself of all those times you've responded in a resourceful way, where you supported yourself or others. You can remind yourself of how awesome you are. Okay? So consider that your predictions of the future can affect your physiology, your emotions, your thinking in this moment. And therefore, it can push that point in the future where you're making progress or completely healed and recovered a little bit further away into the future. If you respond in that more resourceful way, in an authentic way, I'm safe, this symptom is just information, so this is part of the healing process, and how I respond to those symptoms is part of my healing process. Then you can help bring that point in the future where you are healed, recovered, making progress a little bit closer. So I hope that gives you food for thought. When you're ready, you can either carry on just resting with your eyes closed, or you can open your eyes when you're ready. And I'll have a look at the final comments. If you've got any other comments, do share them in the chat. Love to know what your takeaway is from this video. So Diane says, I often sabotage myself. When I try a new intervention, I do very well at first, but as soon as I falter, I do the opposite. I give up and do things that don't help, like stop pacing and feel that I failed. And that's a very common pattern, okay, Diane? What I'd invite you to do is think about what small steps you can take. Often You know, it's like the New Year's resolution syndrome. People start very ambitious, they set big goals, and, you know, kind of like say, right, I'm going to go to the gym every day for an hour, and actually it might be better. I remember one time going to the gym, and actually, to be fair, the personal trainer, it was the first time I'd been, and this is when I was coming out of mecfs. They didn't understand the condition. The regime that they gave me was just too hard, and I couldn't walk for 3 days. I was really stiff, and it was just from the physical exertion. And I didn't go back, which was a bit silly. I could have just started small. I could have listened to my intuition. So I invite you to think about what are some small steps you could take. One of the things I've done in my Facebook group is a 1-minute challenge. And maybe if people would like me to do another one, we'll do another 1-minute challenge. And it's a way of making it really easy to succeed. And you'd be amazed how it can help you gain momentum. One of my star pupils of the 1-minute challenge really took it to heart and was doing her 1-minute challenges every day for months. And she said it really gave her a sense of progress. She felt good about herself. Okay, so really explore how you can make it easy. Diane says, thank you, Simon. Thinking in the past, I was hard on myself. Has opened a space for me to change. Yes, even at my ripe old age. Love that, because I might share that in the broadcast. I really like that. So we can change. You know, we can. It's never too late to change. I've trained people in their 70s and early 80s. And I remember receiving a letter from a woman who I think she was in her mid-70s. And she sent me 4 pages of A4 a few weeks later, telling me all the things she'd been doing. And she'd had mecfs all her life. Okay, so as I say, if you've got any comments, questions, if they've got a topic that you would like me to create some content around, let me know. If I feel like I've got something useful to say, I will. So keep going, dare to dream big dreams. Keep taking steps, even if they're really small steps. You've got this. Wishing you great health. Thanks for watching. Darren says, love the idea of taking a breath and pausing when spotting the harsh words. Yeah, giving that space to explore. Exactly. We want to create that space between stimulus and response. Okay. Dip says, thank you, Simon, for all you do. You're welcome. It's lovely, your generosity of spirit, and I'm so grateful to you. And the other thing, just to say, if you want to join my Facebook group, link below. If you want to join the resilience group coaching, there's no charge for that. You're welcome to make a donation. We meet twice a month. Put the word group below and I will share the link so you can check it out. Decide if you'd like to come. Diane says, thank you, Simon. You're welcome. So keep up the great work, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's nice to have people come. So this topic has obviously resonated. Do leave a comment. Do share the video if you found it helpful. Helps other people see the video. So thanks. And I will be talking today. We've talked a little bit about reframing. And in the next video, a week Thursday, I will talk about reframing in more depth. So do join me live for that if you like. So seeing your comment, Darren, I will share the link, and Diane as well. So thanks, everybody. Keep going. You got this. Wishing you great health. Bye for now.